the global economy by 2038. And this number actually has been backed by our upcoming AI Transformation of Industries report series that we're going to publish on Tuesday.
Well, those are big numbers, but that's also a very wide range, Cathy, to go from 7 to 17. Exactly. What will it take to go from 7 trillion to 17 trillion in terms of gains?
That's an excellent question, because we believe to be able to capture the upper end of the value, the economy needs to be built with human-centric. What we mean by that is AI cannot be replacing human. It needs to be augmenting human, augmenting the skills that we have now. Humans will not be replaced by AI, but it might be replaced by humans who actually use AI. So that's the core message. And AI cannot be applied in this kind of a cookie cutter kind of fashion. You need to look at each country, each region, what are the strengths, where can you apply AI to actually get the maximum gains. Similarly, within the organizations as well. We now have, I think, up to 74% of the companies are using AI in some sort of functions, but many of them are struggling with scaling. They cannot move beyond the pilot kind of phase.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's only like 16% of the companies who are fully prepared. So to really move the needle, you need to make sure that most of the companies and the industry sector and countries as well be able to really look at what is my strengths, what is my weakness, where can I use AI to augment human instead of replacing. That's how we can get the maximum gains.
I want to go back to that 15% number that you spoke of in terms of revenue gains. What was that on account of?
So you need to look at sector by sector. So for example, in health, we know that AI delivery, AI implementation can improve access, outcome, and definitely the whole process efficiency. We're already seeing, for example, in India, for example, there has been a 16% in terms of detection in some of the diseases. So that's translated directly into revenue growth. And then obviously a lot of the times they are working in the back end in terms of clinical process management, etc. But as we are more and more confident in the whole process and in AI, we'll see better growth. In manufacturing, particularly in the advanced manufacturing sector, we know that the market is going to grow to be AI powered. The market is going to grow to be 20 billion by 2028. In financial services as well as consumer and telco. So those are some of the industries who are leading in terms of AI adoption. So a lot of the revenue growth will come from those sectors.
You talked about many companies struggling to move from pilot to proof or scaling up. What's holding that back? Why do you believe that they fail to scale further? And what are we talking about in terms of the kinds of investments required to really scale up? And what could be potentially the time period that we could foresee as far as the return on investments is concerned?
Those are a series of really great questions. So theoretically, as we saw, many companies are adopting the technology, but many of them are still looking at this as a simply adding technology to my existing operation as a top layer. But if you think about it, if you truly implement AI, it's a whole change management strategy that needs to follow. It's about augmenting people and skills. It's about looking at the existing value supply chain. Where do I have gaps and where I can plug them? And that's extremely important, because AI's implementation could disrupt up to 40% of global working hours in the next 5 years. So that change management definitely needs to be done right. Otherwise, they're merely looking at some of the pilot project. And then if you think about it, also AI doesn't just touch on IT department and technology. It's a whole organization. You need to have a relevant committee being set up to look at a whole governance framework. It really promotes this kind of interdisciplinary type of governance and also innovation as well. That's why we believe that AI is not just a job of CTO anymore. It's really on the CEO agenda. So to be able to move forward, not only within the one company, you need to look at cross-sector, where you can collaborate with others, because at the end of the day, AI innovation is about data innovation, and each company's data may not be enough to address that. And you may need to look at cross-sector, adjacent sector, where can I collaborate with some, in the country level, regional level, because of the huge investment requirement of AI, not many countries can afford to have an end-to-end AI value chain. So we do need to look at how do we promote regional collaboration in order to access AI infrastructure, high quality data, and a very consistent kind of governance framework, because that's the only way for people, for employees to all have trust and confidence in implementing AI.
You know, you're talking about a global AI governance framework, and you've been working on that as part of the work that the World Economic Forum is doing. But I was just talking to Borge as well, and I asked him whether you believe that there really is space, political will and political capital at this point in time to forge any kind of global collaboration. What's the feedback that you get as you speak to different stakeholders?
Absolutely. We are fully confident. So we started the AI Governance Alliance as a community in June 2023, because whenever new technology comes through, we believe that there's at least 6 months to 18 months, almost a information black box, because many companies and individuals are experimenting, but they're not really sharing learnings with each other. And in order to share that, first of all, it's safe for everyone in terms of implementing the technology, and then you really accelerate the responsible adoption. So ever since then until now, the Alliance as a community has grown to be more than, I think, 463 organizations, which make it the largest and the most diverse global network of AI stakeholders, because technologists usually don't have a full understanding of what they're inventing until it's actually being implemented. Right. So the more you can put them in the same room, sometimes virtually, the more they can share with each other in terms of the learnings, the pitfalls. That, at the end of the day, is what also makes human unique, because we do talk to each other, we share experiences. So we do believe this is the only way to go forward. We just cannot have pockets of AI development all on their own. That's not safe for the mankind, and it's not going to support us in the long run as well.
But isn't that the key risk today? Because you are seeing, you're seeing different countries take a very different approach and treat this as sort of national interest, from a sovereign perspective, and not really keen to collaborate at this point in time.
Well, I would say you have to look at what's actually happening versus sometimes the narratives. Exactly. Because the reality is, even though AI sovereignty is, a commendable kind of a desire, at the same time, it's just not possible for every country to have an end-to-end AI value chain, given the amount of investment and the talent. Let's not to forget, that's actually the most important thing. Even like within the organizations, more than 40% of the employers would say talent shortage is the major barrier in terms of AI adoption. And at the global level, that challenge is actually, it's actually like 10 times or 50 times higher. So if you think about the collaboration on AI infrastructure, how critical that is. If you cannot do that on the country, like a national level, then regional collaboration, global collaboration is absolutely needed. Data as well. Not a single country will have enough data to be able to train meaningful models that can actually do a lot of things that we want them to do. And very importantly, governance. Without that kind of collaboration, exactly to your point, we as society won't have enough trust and confidence in any country developing their own, or community developing their own AI models. That's why, despite all of the rhetoric, we do see a lot of the collaboration that's happening. And I'm very confident that we will be able to do something similar to the previous decades when humans do unite on some of the bigger issues.
Oh, well, that's good to hear, Cathy, and we hope that that does in fact happen. But, I want to talk to you about the big risk that the Global Risk Report highlights, and that is misinformation and disinformation over the next 2 years. That's the #1 risk that the World Economic Forum has flagged. How concerned are you about dealing with that? I mean, this is a reality, and the scale of it is enormous. But how do we deal with it? What can be done by governments? What can be done, or is being done, or should be done by the private sector, by the tech companies themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do think that requires a very targeted strategy. You need to look at it through the data that's going into training the model to begin with. That's why, again, emphasizing collaboration. Because the more diverse data there is, the more that you can adapt the AI models and AI systems to the local language and culture and norms, the less chance there could be misinformation, misuse, and biases, and make sure that different viewpoints are represented. So at the data level, that's for sure. At the AI governance level, again, this kind of, to really democratize access to AI, you need to have a collective trust from all the different actors, let it be regionally or different sector. So, and the participants in this AI ecosystem, they do understand the importance of it. That's why we do believe that the collaboration at the access to model and the governance level to be able to have this kind of foresight mechanism is extremely important in terms of promoting interoperability of the different governance frameworks and as well as the international cooperation. And then the final thing I would say is, indeed, like the AI generated misinformation is easy to catch headlines. At the same time, let's not to forget, any coin has two sides. That also means there are more and more powerful tools using AI that can detect the misinformation that's being generated by AI. At the end of the day, technology is a tool. If we wanted to tackle certain issues, you need to go to the roots and why this happens. And usually it's not a simple question.
Yes.
So I do think with that, we need to look at holistically what we can do together. At the forum, we've been running, I think for the longest time, Digital Safety Global Coalition to tackle exactly harmful content, misinformation, disinformation. And again, that requires a multi-stakeholder approach so that we all understand at the technical level, what can we do, at the governance level, what can we do as well.
So Cathy, you gave us some numbers at the start to really, contextualize what we are seeing as far as the adoption of AI is concerned. I want to understand from you, in terms of working hours, what potential AI can have to reshape that? What are we talking about in the next 5 to 10 years, for instance? And finally, who's winning the AI race at this point in time? Which regions, which countries specifically, and what do you make of the India AI story?
Great. So in terms of numbers, I think I mentioned earlier, up to 40% of global working hours will be disrupted. But at the same time, you need to look at the productivity gain there. We're seeing a lot of the companies that's leading in AI adoption, they're already seeing productivity gain that's at 2.5 times higher than the ones who don't adopt AI. And the cost saving is, I think, is mounted to about 13%. So yes, it is disrupting the hours, but at the same time, if human skills can be used in places where AI actually is limited, that's where we will see that as a collective gain. And that context is also sector by sector and country by country, because, for example, manufacturing in the US, even though it's going to impact, I think, roughly 20 million jobs by, I think, the end of the decade, at the same time, even with that calculation, we're still seeing 2.1 million job workforce gap that's not being fulfilled.
Right.
Because many sectors, we are facing the challenge that actually there's a skill shortage as well. So you do need to look at it sector by sector. In terms of who's winning, Hard to say, because investment don't always translate into the eventual, the profit margins or even the top line growth. I just think it's great that humans are innovating and pushing the limits. But in terms of winning per se, I don't think there's a clear answer. And from our perspective, the more collaboration we see, the better.
The more winners we probably will see as well.
Yeah. India has huge opportunities, because I do think it's one thing about incremental productivity gains. It's another thing about using the technology to completely redesign the system. Think about how certain countries can leapfrog. Like in the US, for example, the healthcare is facing lots of challenges because of the low trust in AI and technologies. As opposed to some countries, in India included, actually there's a higher degree of trust. The number is much higher than the 44% US number, for example. And then regulation. In the US, we know that it's a heavily regulated industry. In India, actually, and many other countries, it might be a different story. So you need to think about how do you leverage that kind of strengths and be able to redesign the system. That's where we see that it will be a win-win situation.
So do you believe that 2025 will be the year that we continue to build on the AI story, but also see some breakthroughs in terms of return on investments?
I do think so, and one of the bodies of work, I think I wanted to emphasize the AI and energy impact, because on one hand we need to look at the gains of the AI, how does AI enable energy transition. On the other hand, we also need to look at how do we manage the increasing energy demand. AI-related energy consumption is basically adding by 50% every year through the end of the decade. And the data center electricity use alone counts towards, I think, 3% of global demand by the end of the decade as well. So how do you balance it? Yeah. It's a very delicate question, and it's hard to see where we'll end up. So on one hand, it is consuming energy, so it's difficult to calculate ROI. On the other hand, we're seeing huge gains across different sectors. We're seeing 10 to 60% of energy savings across industries. So
hopefully it'll offset.
Exactly, and hopefully, the efficiency gains will be higher as well.
Well, that certainly would be the hope. But Cathy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us here in Davos. And thanks very much for your time here on CNBC-TV18. That's Cathy Lee, looks at all things AI and technology for the World Economic Forum, giving us some hard numbers on the gains that have been made on account of adoption of AI, but also, the expectation of what the future looks like as we move ahead. We are going to take a break here, but we continue the conversations. Keep watching Davos 2025. We're back in a moment with more.